Nicoletta Goulanche is the Associate Professor of History at the University of New Hampshire, specializing in modern British history. Nicoletta, thank you so much for joining us.
Very happy to be here.
Unfortunately, it's under some horrible news that had just come down not even a half hour ago, news time here in the CBN newsroom. We heard of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Can we start with the monumental breaking of that announcement and what that means historically for the world?
Well, I think that this is going to shake Britons to the core, but it's also going to have an impact on people throughout the Commonwealth, some of whom looked upon her as a crown head, even though they were living in independent countries. Queen Elizabeth has reigned for most Britons' entire lives, and she connected them with their past, with the empire, and with everything they've known. And they just celebrated her Jubilee. So I think this is going to be very, very upsetting for people, very immediate.
Well, what do we think that's going to happen next with Prince Charles, her eldest son, who has automatically become king, even though there's going to be members transitioning of Parliament gathering to swear allegiance to the new monarch? What do we expect from him?
I think we expect from Prince Charles a very different kind of monarchy. He's already said that his monarchy is not going to be a monarchy of great pageant and expense. He has referred to himself as a man who will live, quote, in the shop, in the flat above the shop, meaning he's going to have a few small rooms in Buckingham Palace and throw it open to the public. And I think he's going to try and show himself to be a sensible monarch and a prudent monarch and a less expensive monarchy. But I'm not sure that's what people will want, because I think people will miss the pageantry of Queen Elizabeth's reign.
Most definitely, but let's dive in historically to the Queen's legacy and her life. Can you run us through, I guess, just the highlights of what the nation needs to know about when we mourn the death of Queen Elizabeth II?
Well, I think that Queen Elizabeth was so important because she was sort of the Princess of Wales during the Second World War. She and her sister drove trucks and learned how to fix things and were participants in the war itself, which is one of the great and really earth-shattering events of British history in the Second World War. Her father, unbeknownst to people, had cancer, and they followed Princess Elizabeth's wedding to the extremely handsome Prince Philip, and she gave addresses to her people in the Commonwealth in the early 50s when she was a beautiful young princess. And then while she was on her honeymoon with Prince Philip, her father died, and she herself, she was in Kenya, became the queen. And since then, she has been a devoted presence, a presence full of the glamour of royalty, but at the same time, someone down to earth who invited Britons in to be sort of part of, to see her family at work. And Queen Elizabeth, the first prime minister she greeted at Buckingham Palace was Winston Churchill. And the final one has been Liz Truss just this Tuesday. So she was performing important state functions from the beginning in the 1950s all the way to her 96th year, 2022, and she anointed in some ways that final prime minister, her 15th.
The public certainly loved the pageantry, and I understand that. I did as well. She was also not above her faith. She was very devout to Jesus Christ, and she was very open about that to the public in all of her Christmas addresses. Can I have you re-articulate that, as well as her relationship to the late Billy Graham?
Well, the Queen, the monarch in Britain, is in some ways the head of the Church of England, and she took that role very, very seriously. She never missed a Remembrance Sunday when people remembered the veterans of the two world wars. In fact, this year she tried very hard to make it, but her mobility and health issues got in the way. But the other times she only missed it when she was pregnant. She attended church services regularly, and as you said, she gave a warming and inspiring address to the nation every single Christmas. And so, yes, she was a woman of faith. In some ways, it caused problems. She would not, for instance, approve of Princess Margaret marrying her first love because he was divorced. And she has since tried to grow a little bit more liberal with the times, but she was a very, very strong bastion of the Church of England. And I think that will be a little bit different under King Charles.
So moving forward, what's the formal procession when it comes to a royal funeral?
Well, what is going to happen is the Queen's body will be sent by train to King's Cross Station. And Prince Charles will meet the body there along with the Prime Minister. And then she will be sent to Buckingham Palace so that the family can sit vigil with the body. Prince Charles himself then will go on a tour to England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, each of the constituent parts of the United Kingdom, to introduce himself as the king. And then after that, actually longer than most of us would normally take, there will be a funeral at Westminster Abbey. And well, we imagine thronging crowds will be there. And it'll be months, I think, beyond that when the King Charles has his formal coronation. He is king because the minute the spirit left the Queen's body, he became the king. It is a mystical thing that happens instantaneously on the death of one monarch, the other becomes a monarch. So he is king, but he will go through a coronation. Apparently, he's planning a much less fancy and grand one than what Elizabeth had. And again, that goes along with this same idea of his simplicity. But I think her funeral will be quite an extravaganza.
Knowing that the Queen had conservative values, she was strong in her faith, and you'd mentioned that the incoming king is going to be doing something very different where he opens up to the public, just not as much as his late mother did. So can you please walk us through maybe the political differences that the king has in comparison to the late Queen?
Well, I think one of the things that was so amazing about the late Queen is that she held herself above party. So she has to open Parliament every year, and every year she gives an address saying what her government is going to do. And it doesn't matter if it was the socialist post-war government of the Labour Party that established the welfare state or the conservative government of Boris Johnson. She would meet with each and every prime minister regardless of their political values. I think one of the difficulties that we're going to see with Charles and maybe and to some degree with William is that they've made quite clear they're environmentalists. They are attuned to many of the particular causes that the left has championed. So I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to have the same kind of traditional bedrock as well as nonpartisan stature that Queen Elizabeth had.
We appreciate your time very much. Thank you so much for joining us here at CBN, but unfortunately that's all the time we have left.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be